His eyes opened. The hospital room came into focus, and then his brain registered what it was seeing. The nurses were walking on the ceiling. The fourth bag hung upward from the floor. The door was at the top of the room. Gravity itself seemed to have reversed. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, closed them, and opened them again. Nothing changed. The world was upside down, not tilted, not spinning, not distorted, completely, perfectly, impossibly inverted. And the worst part? His brain was telling him this was normal. This isn't a riddle. This isn't a metaphor. This is what actually happened to a man after a motorcycle accident. And what his brain did next would force neuroscience to confront a terrifying truth. Reality isn't real. It's just your brain's best guess. And sometimes, your brain guesses wrong. Let's rewind to the moment everything flipped. A man, we'll call him David, was riding his motorcycle through a quiet street when a car pulled out without looking. David hit the pavement hard. His helmet cracked but held. He was conscious, breathing, moving. The paramedics arrived within minutes, checked his vitals, scanned for bleeding, broken bones, internal injuries. "You're lucky," one of them said. "Could have been a lot worse." David nodded, dazed but relieved. Just a bad concussion, probably. Maybe some bruising. He'd be fine. They loaded him into the ambulance, and that's when reality shattered. As the EMTs leaned over him, checking his pupils, something looked off. They were upside down. No, wait. He was upside down. He tried to orient himself, but nothing made sense. The ambulance ceiling was below him. The floor was above. The paramedic's face was inverted, talking from the wrong direction entirely. "Sir, can you hear me?" David could hear him, but the voice seemed to be coming from the wrong place. Am I upside down?" David asked. The paramedic frowned. "No, you're lying flat on your back." But David's brain was screaming that he was on his stomach, staring at the ceiling below him. By the time they reached the hospital, David was in full panic mode. Not because he was in pain, because the entire world had flipped. The ER doctors thought he was delirious. Head trauma does strange things. Confusion, disorientation, hallucinations. All normal after a motorcycle crash. They ran the standard tests. CT scan, MRI scan, neurological exams. Everything came back clean. No skull fracture, no brain bleed, no swelling. Structurally, his brain looked fine. But when David sat up in his hospital bed and looked around the room, nothing was where it should be. The ceiling fan was beneath him, spinning lazily in the floor. The window overlooking the parking lot was above him, gravity pulling cars upward into the sky. The doctor standing at his bedside was inverted, feet where his head should be, white coat hanging the wrong way. "Can you describe what you're seeing?" the doctor asked, scribbling notes. "You're upside down," David said flatly. "The whole room is upside down." The doctor glanced around the perfectly normal hospital room. "David, I'm standing upright. You're lying in bed. Everything is..." I know what you're telling me, David interrupted, his voice tight. But that's not what I'm seeing. The doctor put down his pen. Because David wasn't confused. He wasn't disoriented. He wasn't guessing. He was calmly, rationally describing a world that had been rotated 180 degrees. And his eyes, his perfectly functioning, optically normal eyes, were sending correct information to his brain. The problem was what his brain was doing with that information. They brought in a neuro-ophthalmologist. She ran every vision test imaginable, checked his retinas, his optic nerves, his eye movements. Your eyes are working perfectly, she said. Then why is everything upside down? David asked. She hesitated. Because your brain is processing visual information incorrectly. Let me explain what that means. Your eyes don't see anything. They're just cameras, capturing light, flipping it upside down. Yes, the image on your retina is actually inverted, and sending that data to your brain. Your brain is what creates the image you see. It takes the raw data, flips it right side up, adds context, fills in blind spots, and constructs what you experience as vision. It's not passive reception, it's active construction. And in David's case, something in that construction process had broken. The doctors gave it a name, spatial orientation disorder caused by traumatic brain injury. But names don't fix problems. Because here's what they told David next. We don't know if this will go away. We don't have medication for this. We don't have a surgery. We can only wait and see if your brain fixes itself. David stared at them, or rather, stared at their upside-down faces, and felt his stomach drop. This might be permanent. Try to imagine this. You wake up tomorrow and the ceiling is the floor. Not metaphorically, literally. How do you walk? Your brain is telling you that moving forward means falling upward. How do you eat? Your hand reaches for a glass, but your brain says the glass is above you when it's actually below. How do you navigate a doorway when your perception says the door is on the ceiling? Every single instinct you've built over your entire life is now wrong. David had to relearn everything. Walking required conscious thought. He'd take a step forward and his brain would scream that he was about to fall into the sky. He'd grip railings, moving slowly, fighting every instinct. Eating was a nightmare. His brain said the fork was above him. His eyes, logically, could see it was on the table. But his spatial perception insisted otherwise. He'd reach, miss, knock things over. It's like being drunk, he told a nurse. Except I'm completely sober and it never stops. He couldn't watch TV. The screen was upside down, yes, but his brain was also trying to process motion in reverse. People walked backward. Cars drove in the wrong direction. Reality had become a funhouse mirror he couldn't escape, and the psychological toll was crushing. Because here's what nobody talks about. When your brain can't trust what you're seeing, you start to question everything. Am I going insane? Is this real? Will I ever be normal again? Days turned into weeks. The world stayed upside down, and David started to lose hope. Week 3. David woke up opened his eyes and saw the same inverted hospital room he'd been staring at for 21 days. Except something felt different. Not visually. The room was still upside down, but the wrongness of it felt less intense, like his brain was getting tired of fighting the inversion. He mentioned it to his doctor during rounds. "Things don't feel as upside down today. I don't know how to explain it." The doctor made a note but didn't seem optimistic. "Your brain might be adapting to the condition. That doesn't mean it's fixing itself." But that night, David noticed something else. The edges of objects looked off, like the borders between the ceiling and walls weren't quite aligned anymore. He stared at the window. It was still above him, but it felt like it was trying to drift back down. By week 4, things started shifting. Slowly, imperceptibly, like watching a sunset. You don't see it moving, but suddenly it's in a different position. The ceiling began to feel less like the floor. The floor began to feel less like the sky. His brain was rotating the world back, not all at once, not cleanly, but gradually, painfully. His internal map of reality was correcting itself. The doctors were stunned. They documented cases of spatial disorders before, but never one that self-corrected so dramatically. What was happening? Neuroplasticity. Here's the miracle buried in David's nightmare. His brain never stopped trying to fix the problem. While David was consciously struggling to navigate an upside-down world, his unconscious brain was working overtime. Neural pathways were firing. Connections were being tested. Spatial processing centers were recalibrating. Think of it like this. Your brain has an internal GPS, a map of where you are in space, where objects are around you, which way is up. David's GPS had been scrambled in the crash, but the brain is plastic, adaptable, obsessed with making sense of the world. So it started rebuilding the map. Tiny adjustments, subtle recalibrations, testing visual input against physical sensation. If I reach down and my hand touches the floor, but my eyes say the floor is up, one of these inputs is wrong. Over thousands of repetitions, the brain started trusting physical feedback over the corrupted visual processing. It began overriding the inversion. By week 6, David could look at the ceiling and recognize it as the ceiling, even though part of his brain was still insisting it was the floor. By week 8, the world had mostly righted itself. By week 10, David walked out of the hospital seeing the world the way everyone else did. Normal, right side up, real. The doctors couldn't fully explain it. They'd done nothing. No medication, no surgery, no therapy. David's brain had fixed itself. David's recovery wasn't just a medical curiosity. It was proof that reality is negotiable. Because here's what his case revealed. The world you see right now, the room you're in, the screen you're reading, isn't objective truth. It's a hallucination. A very convincing, very consistent hallucination that your brain constructs from incomplete data. Your eyes send signals. Your brain interprets them. It fills in gaps, corrects errors, makes assumptions. And then it presents that construction to your conscious mind as reality. Most of the time, it works perfectly. But David's case proved that when the construction breaks, the entire world can flip. And the terrifying part, you'd have no way of knowing. Because if your brain tells you the ceiling is the floor and presents that as absolute truth, how would you ever question it? This is why neuroscientists describe perception as controlled hallucination. You're not seeing the world as it is. You're seeing your brain's best guess of what the world is. And David spent 2 months living proof that your brain can guess wrong. But here's the hopeful part. Your brain can also learn to guess correctly again. Because neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, isn't just for stroke victims or trauma survivors. It's happening in your brain right now. Every time you learn something new, every time you adapt to change, every time your brain encounters something unexpected and adjusts, you are constantly rewriting your own internal reality. David's brain just did it more dramatically than most. David lives a normal life now. The world is right side up. He drives, works, functions like everyone else. But he never forgot what it felt like to live in an inverted reality. "Sometimes I look at the ceiling," he said in a follow-up interview, "and I remember when it was the floor. And I think about how certain I was, how absolutely convinced that the world was upside down. And it makes me wonder, what else am I seeing wrong right now and don't even know it?" That's the real horror of his story. Not that reality can break, but that when it does, you might never realize it's broken. Your brain will present the broken version as truth, as obvious, as undeniable, and you'll live your entire life inside that false construction, never knowing there's another way to see. David was lucky. His brain found its way back, but his story is a reminder. Reality is fragile. Perception is flexible, and the world you see is just one version of what could be. So the next time you're absolutely certain about something you're seeing, remember the man who woke up upside down and wonder, what is my brain not showing me? And if you think a brain flipping reality is impossible, wait until you hear about the girl whose body broke the laws of time itself. She was born in 1993, but by 2003, she still looked like an infant. Her body was aging at 1/10 the normal rate. While other kids grew, learned, changed, she stayed frozen. Not in time, but outside of it. Doctors called it Syndrome X. Scientists studied her cells and realized something terrifying. Aging might not be inevitable. It might be optional. That story is next, and it'll change how you think about time, growth, and what it means to be human.